What's the biggest lever that a man can push, pull, and use right now to get the biggest impact in their relationship? Welcome to the Kickass Couples Podcast. This is the place where we help committed couples who want to level up their marriage experience newfound clarity, hope, and confidence. We're Matthew and Kim, co-hosts and husband and wife.
In 26 years together, we've seen a lot and never thought it could be as good as it is right now. We're here to help you successfully navigate the messy, dirty, and wonderful world of marriage.
We believe all couples deserve and are capable of experiencing an extraordinary and fulfilling marriage. And each week, we're bringing you life lessons from real-life successful couples to help you grow and strengthen your relationship.
And now, back to the show.
Are you a man who wonders what he can do to build his most fulfilling and satisfying intimate relationship? Do you feel like you're not sure where to start or what steps to take to achieve that desired state? If so, you're not alone. Many men face lots of challenges when it comes to finding and maintaining a healthy, happy, and fulfilling relationship. We've put together a panel of experts to share their winning secrets on how to build your best relationship. From communication skills to intimacy strategies, our experts will provide you with the tools and guidance you need to create the love life you've always wanted. Jerremy Alexander Newsome is the CEO of Real Life Trading and founder of the RL Foundation. He's a leading global expert in stock market education. He helps others understand market trends and offers private mentorship. Jerremy is a prolific investor with early investments in Tesla, Ethereum, Apple, and Square, promoting financial liberation. He's also a kick-ass husband, so named by his wife, Svetlana. Rabbi Dr. Yosef Lin is an executive coach who assists individuals in thriving in their professional and personal lives, particularly in relationships. He co-authored Not a Partnership and holds a doctorate in organizational psychology and a master's in applied positive psychology. We're getting down to brass tacks with specific, actionable strategies that all men can use to build the relationship most can only dream of. Welcome back to the Kickass Couples Podcast. We're having a killer panel discussion today with two heavy hitters. We're going to talk about not only their own experience, but their practices and what they've found on what a man can do to have his best relationship. Joining us today, Kim and I, are Jerremy Newsome and Yosef Lin. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Excited to see you guys. You beautiful couple. Pumped.
Yeah, we are excited to be with you. So Kim's going to share a little quote.
Matthew has a great quote from Instagram that says, "Ladies, a man that is truly interested in you will never leave you guessing about the role he intends to play in your life. Good men pursue women that they want with upfront communication, genuine intentions, and consistent effort."
So guys and lady, men get a bad rap, I think, about when we talk about commitment, intimacy, true love, and all the other stuff that has to go into what makes a good relationship. And, you know, there are stereotypical views of men. And I said this earlier when we were talking before we started that I don't think any of the three men are stereotypical on this call today. Maybe we'd all like to think that we're doing what we need to do and towing the line. But we're here today to get down to the brass tacks and kind of talk about what can a man do if he wants to create, and I mean create and then contribute to and sustain his best relationship. What do they, what does he have to do to get there? So I'd love to hear, Yosef, from you first. And the question I want to start off with is, what do you think the keys are? Like if you had to say, man, these are the top three things or behaviors that contribute to the success of your own relationship. What have you found in your experience? Like, oh my gosh, if I do these things, I know we're going to have a great time.
So I'll tell you, I'm going to boil it down and maybe be a little bit radical here and push back at you and say, I'm going to put it into one thing, which I have seen that has been the biggest game changer in my own personal marriage. And was basically the catalyst that got me into this whole world of trying to help other couples. And what I have seen is that when I proactively invest in my marriage, that is what creates the most growth, the most connection, the most intimacy, you name it. And unfortunately, there is this idea out there that, well, if you just find the right person, it's going to automatically like get better over time. And it will just get stronger and we'll get more connected. And it doesn't work that way anywhere else with anything in life. If all of us didn't proactively invest in our professional lives, if any other endeavor outside of our professional lives, we didn't put time, effort, and energy in, not just to keep it afloat, but to make it great, then no success would happen. And what I find in the world of marriage as well is that there's this kind of mentality we have that how things should naturally kind of play out, which we don't hold that to be true anywhere else. And when people stick with that in marriage, it only leads to more frustration, more disconnect, and the list can go on. And therefore, I think that the most important question we have to ask ourselves is, what are we doing to proactively invest into making this marriage awesome? And I always tell anyone who I'm teaching, couples I'm working with, seminars I'm giving, I always say great marriages don't happen, great marriages are built. And I think that we have to look at our lives and look at, we're putting effort everywhere. How much effort are you actually really going out of your way to make this most important part of your life truly awesome?
Love that. Great. Thank you, Jeremy. How would you expand that, or what do you find in your own experience that has gotten you to be a smiling guy most of the time?
I really like that quote. Great marriages do not happen, they are built. And they're built from each individual, but most importantly, the man, and I'll tell you why, working on himself and working on his communication. The quote that Kimberly mentioned is the man has his role and he intends to fulfill that role, and he has upfront communication with his woman or with his partner. But the big challenge for a lot of men is learning not only what to communicate, but what we're feeling and then how we communicate it. Because women have different love languages. Women hear things differently than men hear things. We generally talk differently. We have different styles. So to give a great example, if my wife asks me how I'm feeling, we have decided to come up with 3 answers that I'm allowed to give. Meaning I can't say I'm fine, I'm good, I'm okay. I can't answer with the baseline general status quo answer that we give so often to everybody. So I'm allowed for myself to say, I don't know right now. Let me get back to you. So that way I can think about it, because I probably don't know. I'm a guy. I've been working on this communication with my internal dialogue to figure out my emotions, how I'm feeling. Because if I'm not hungry or horny or sleepy, I don't really know how I'm feeling. So I got to figure it out. And I got to attach a word to that emotion. And that's a really fun journey for a lot of men. The other thing I can do is obviously say, hey, here's how I'm feeling, and come up with an emotion: elated, joyful, stressed, anxious. Or I can say, my love, let's talk about that later. I have something I have to do right this moment, and I'm not able to engage in that type of dialogue presently. Therefore, we come up with a time later, and that's, whatever, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, after little man's put to sleep. And then we have that conversation about how I was feeling. So those are the 3 things that help me. And for me, in my opinion, and I totally agree with Joseph, if we are working on the marriage, the part for a lot of men is working on how you communicate specifically your feelings.
Yeah, tied to emotion. That's good stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, communication is huge. It's our second pillar.
Yeah, that's it.
And what we believe it takes to make a successful marriage, and learning communication styles for each of us is vital to our relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So what would the 2 of you say that, so men are stereotyped, and there are hurdles that men have to overcome for that being stereotyped, and what would you say that those maybe 3 stereotypes are, and what those hurdles are that they need to overcome? especially today in today's
Well,
society.
that's a good question. I'm going to let Jeremy go first.
Are you tired of feeling like you're living with a roommate instead of a lover? Do you miss the days when you were completely into each other, intellectually, emotionally, and physically? The truth is, many couples are struggling behind closed doors. Putting on a brave face for the rest of the world is exhausting. If you want to get back your joy, return to thriving, and take pleasure in your marriage, then Kickass Couples Coaching and Matthew P. Hoffman are here to help. Join us alone or with your partner and start taking steps towards overcoming the pain-filled obstacles and improving your relationship right now. For a limited time, we're offering a free relationship assessment call. Go to MatthewPHoffman.com/coaching to book your free call now so you can start making real changes in your most important relationship today.
Yeah, let me start because this is a good one. I do like this one. So let's do three stereotypes. Men only want sex. Men only want younger women who are hotter, and men are terrified of commitment. Those are three really, really powerful, like really big, broad arching stereotypes. I think a lot of women will go, yep, that explains every guy I've ever dealt with. And the cool part about stereotypes is they're there for a reason. They don't just like accidentally pop up, because generally there is a broader audience somewhere where that aspect of that stereotype is true.
Right.
And I would say every single human being enjoys sex. That's why we're on this earth. And men want respect. If a woman can not only show respect, but use that word, oh, dude, like a guy's going to turn into a puppy. Every single man on earth wants to be told that I respect you. I respect your decisions. I respect your actions. I respect what you do for this family. Like, that's such a good word for guys. Every guy will melt on that word. No issue. Commitment, they're just afraid to commit to you. Right? Men will commit to all kinds of things. We commit to work. We commit to a football team for our entire life. Like, this is my team. Like, men have no problem committing. If a man, and if a lady's listening to this and they're like, my man has a hard time committing, he's not committing to you. And that there's a million ways for that to start transforming. But to keep in mind that men are not afraid of commitment at all. We commit to things all the time. And so I'll leave with those two and those two pieces of my thoughts. And I can't wait to hear what Yosef has to say.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna add on to that, and that was nice. I'll pick two other things, which I found to be true. I've seen it personally, and again with people who I work with. Number one, I think there is an assumption that a lot of times a partner or wife will have with their husband that they know how much I appreciate them. Like, a lot of times, I'll hear a wife say, well, my husband really knows how much I appreciate them. And I think that is a huge misunderstanding and a really bad stereotype, because men need appreciation in such a powerful way. It is almost like a fuel. It's like without that, you just run out of gas. And when they get that, it is something which just can totally create just such awesome energy in a relationship. And I always tell people, never assume that someone knows how much you appreciate them, especially in your marriage. I think it's kind of like, my husband knows how much I appreciate them. Like, that is a big mistake. Don't fall into that trap.
Right.
Number two is, I think that there's a stereotype, there's a mistake, there's a blockage that people think that men can't be vulnerable. And I think that men crave that. They may need to do it in their own way, or may take them a little bit longer, or may not happen instantly. But I think being able to be vulnerable with your spouse, to be open and raw with your spouse, is something that we yearn for and creates tremendous amount of closeness. So I think that people just get, men can be put in a box, like, or, you can't do this. Okay, it may look different for a man and woman. I'm all for that. But I think vulnerability is something that we desire in such a real way, especially with that person that we're connected to as our spouse, So those I would say would be my two things I'd throw into the mix of what Jeremy said.
Yeah, I agree. When my husband is really vulnerable with me, it will make, he may have tears in his eyes. I all of a sudden feel so connected and so intimate and close to him that it's amazing what it does for our relationship. So I
think
agree.
I love both of what you guys said. And just to follow up on a couple of those things, there's a funny cartoon of an older man and woman that are married. And the man is saying to the wife, when we got married, I told you I love you. And I also told you if things ever change, I'll let you know. Right. And, saying it 100 times isn't enough. And I think, Joseph, it's a two-way street, really, because women need to know you value me, right? I'm appreciated. Jeremy talked about if you say this to a guy, I respect you. That is fuel, but it's so funny. I think it's fuel for both sexes, both men and women. And we can't do it enough. And it kind of comes back to that communication thing. And then the other thing is that men do desire to be vulnerable. And I think that men are willing. I know that in my own relationship with Kim, I'm willing to be vulnerable because her commitment to me is not an issue. I know without a doubt, in every way, shape, and form, that's a pillar. That's our first pillar. I know she's committed to me, so it's not restrictive. It frees me to be vulnerable with her because I know she's going to respect and hold it sacred and not make fun of, diminish, or demean. And I think that men have in the back of their mind, I see Jeremy kind of shaking his head a little bit, we're afraid. I think there's some fear there for men that when I do become vulnerable, I'm leery of doing it. We commit to all kinds of things, but if I do it to my wife, is she going to step on me? Is she going to hurt me? Is it going to, if I open that chink in the armor, am I risking getting hurt?
Yep.
Right. And so thank you for saying that. And I think, I want to share with you kind of, you made comments here too. A common complaint I hear from men a lot is that the intimacy and sex life I have is just not enough. It's not often enough. It's not good. Right. I want it more and she wants it less. And you hear that. So the question I have, and Joseph, I'd love to start with you if you can, is how should men look at intimacy or define it or approach it? And, what role does the sexual intimacy have in a healthy relationship with their wife?
Well, I'll start off here. I think that it is the meat and potatoes. I think that it is the most powerful place of connection, and it is something which spills over and gives energy to every other part of the marriage. And I think one of the biggest problems that happens is that people don't realize this. And it's kind of just like a nice part of the marriage. And it ends up a lot of times that, one side is frustrated with certain things and it never really gets addressed. And it never really gets the focus that it deserves. And what I find is so crucial is that, we open up this whole discussion talking about communication. If there's a topic which needs the most amount of communication, it's this area. And I find that people don't make that happen. Now, we can speak about what makes good communication and what makes bad communication. That could be a separate question we can go into. But I find that this has got to be, when you're sitting down, you're trying to make, an accounting of how your marriage is doing, of how we can get better, or what things are stuck. This has got to be something which is at the top of the list that is really getting the attention that it deserves.
Love that. Jeremy, what do you think? What are your thoughts about the role of intimacy in a great relationship, and how should a man view that sexual intimacy in the best way in their relationship?
I have two unique thoughts on it. So, yes, I think that's a very common, like you said, complaint. But what a man generally doesn't realize is that there is only 99% of the time, in my unmathematically defined opinion, 99% of the time, if a woman is not having physical sex with her partner, it's because she doesn't trust him. It has nothing to do with lack of desire. It has everything to do with lack of trust. because women want sex more than men. Hashtag, they can have multiple orgasms. You think that they don't want to do that all the time? It's like we have one and we're like, hey, that was cool. She can have like 14 in the same amount of time. She wants to party. All right. She's not trusting you. So my thesis would be use the energy that we're going to have from lack of sexual gratification, because that is an energy. Use that energy to rebuild trust, to be a man of your word, to be a man of integrity, to do things that you say you're going to do. Honey, I'm going to clean out the car. Cool. Go clean out the car, dude, when you get home, right? Don't sit down on the couch and watch TV. Use that energy, use that angst, use that emotion for motion, right? Actually go do something and rebuild the trust, have communication, rebuild, lower the walls of resentment, and she will open up. It might take a little bit, but it generally has occurred after the honeymoon phase is over and like that 2, 3, 4 year window, because things have started falling apart, right? The guy has stopped doing certain things. He stopped buying her flowers or cleaning out her car, or taking out the groceries, taking out the trash. And he said he would do it, but he didn't, and he forgot. And he never apologized. And so she built up some resentment. And so that's what happened. And so for me, figure out a way to turn your woman on is like, I think probably the coolest challenge that every man should have. So if she's not being with you, figure it out. It's a man problem, because the woman's ready. And again, this is all my opinion. She's ready to go. We just got to do a little bit of work to figure out how we can turn that engine on.
Right. Yeah. And I think that I love what you say, because it kind of links back to that trust and honesty is an emotion. I trust you based on what I see, what do I experience, what I feel. And I think that's a great element. Thank you.
Yeah,
I do
thank
as
you.
well. So women in general are much more sensitive to their and much more focused, I would say, on their emotional needs first, right? Emotional needs before sex. And we really need to feel valued and understood. But men seem to struggle, I think, developing that emotional bond more than women do. And so how can a man really become a woman's hero in this way? Really speaking to her emotional needs.
I'm gonna let Jerry take a look at that.
Yeah, brother. Ask her, and ask her often. I mean, this is something. All right, team, here goes. I have a reminder on my phone to do this. My wife wouldn't be mad to know this, because I need to be reminded. I have a reminder, a daily reminder on my phone to ask my wife 2 things. Will you marry me? So if she says no, that means that we can pause and like figure some stuff out. Things are happening. Problems have arisen. And then number 2, I ask, and I love that you use the word understood, Kimberly. I ask, do you feel understood? Do you feel heard? Do you feel seen? And she has said no before. And so I'm like, all right, let's talk about it, baby girl. What can I do? How can I help you more? How can I remove some stress? Let's chat about that. I would love to learn more. Why do you feel that way? And just like as a man, we sometimes forget to do that, because we have, right, women can think about 15 things simultaneously. And men claim that we can think about 15 things, but we don't. We think about one thing, and this is it. And this is what we can do. And so whatever that one thing is that's going on, that's what we got. So if we remind and we have those conversations, generally, a woman will help us out, and they'll kind of guide us, and they can give us a direction, because all men want to do is be a protector. That's it. We want to be a protector. So if a woman can go, hey, here's where you're not protecting me. Here's the 3 things that you could do to make me feel more understood, heard, and seen. Guys will go do it. We're not mind readers, but we will go do things if we were told to, if we're directly asked to, very frequently. And that's my answer.
There you go, listeners. Set a timer for intentionality. That's
Yeah.
Do whatever it
really
takes.
basic.
If that's what it takes, if that's how you work,
I love
do
it.
right.
Yep.
I'm gonna piggyback on what Jeremy said. I agree 100%. And I have seen different things work like that. I guess the main thing, I think, what I agree with so much with Jeremy saying, is that men, if they don't make time to proactively try and do that, it usually is going to just end up blowing up in their face anyways, because the way that your wife will get your attention is because it gets so bad that it's going to erupt into a big argument, into some sort of massive, who knows what.
Yep.
And the problem is, we're so type A throughout the day, get this done and get that done. And if we don't make a time to check in with our spouse, if I don't make time that, does my wife have what she needs? Does she feel frustrated with something, et cetera, things like that, it's not going to happen. But how can I do that? So, for example, I find one of the things that I try and do, not perfect at it, but I strive for it. Okay. Unfortunately, one of the biggest distractors that can get in the way of doing anything proactive in our marriage can sometimes be this device. Now, you can use it in a good way, like Jerremy just said. One of the things I try and do is that when I come home at night, come home from work, if I can find time that my job when I walk in my house is to put my phone away, not on silent, not like, vibrating somewhere. I really try and go out of my way. Let me use the button on this, which gets used the least, which is the off button.
Yep.
Let me turn this guy off. The world is not going to blow up. And let me spend the next 20 minutes just checking on my spouse. How are you? How is your day? What's happening here? Where nothing else matters. Even my kids running around the house, they'll be fine. Let me deal with my number one priority. If I don't make an active effort to do that,
Yep.
it doesn't happen, and it ends up just coming out in some sort of way over a point of tension later on, and therefore at that point it's all downhill anyways.
Bingo.
Love that. Great stuff. So I'm curious, each of you in your practices, your businesses, and the other men and women you come into contact with, or even in your own relationship. So you guys mentioned conflict, and you said, you know what, Joseph, you said if you don't do it, the conflict builds up, it explodes, right? And conflict can be challenging in relationships. So if you have to give advice to a guy, here's the best way to handle conflict when it arises. What would that be? Or how do you handle it? So the disagreements come up, or I see this and they see that. So here we're at that fork in the road. How can men navigate that as a win instead of as destruction?
So I'm going to keep it very simple and very basic. And if you can get these two things right, golden. And I just want to just give an introduction before I even say anything. We all know when you're able to work through something that's difficult in your marriage via communication, there's nothing that creates more connection and intimacy. It's like gold, right? When you have that difficult conversation, you can do it in the right way. There's nothing that's going to make you feel closer to your spouse. So I think it's important that we all just keep our eye on the end goal. But I have found like this. We've been speaking about communication. There are two golden rules to communication. And if you can apply these two things, and you can, check the box on each of these things, the communication will go great. And if not, you're going down. And the two things that I always see is, number one is timing, and number two is how you say it. And these are two things. I'll explain a bit more. Number one, timing, which is this the right time to have this conversation? And usually the answer is no. I'm in a rush. My wife's in a rush. We're both exhausted. There's a lot of at home with this, you name it. And we get so caught in urgency that things have to happen now. Like, wait a second, we've been married for 20 years. Like, it doesn't have to happen like right now. So I find that timing, if we can get the timing right, all of a sudden you take a tense moment or something that needs to be spoken about, and you find the right timing, 2 days later or a next morning over a cup of coffee, it can be awesome. Number two is how you say it. We all know that when we communicate, it's not just the words we say, it's all the other things going on. The body language, the voice, the eyebrows, the whole. And what I find is that when I'm communicating, am I communicating in a way which is loving, warm, connecting? Again, that's both in my words and in everything else going on in my communication, or not. If I all of a sudden show up in a conversation and now I'm speaking in a language of like real attack mode, and my body language is like, I'm really upset, and you can see it in my eyebrows and my arms, like this thing is a disaster waiting to happen. So what I find is that great communication, if you could check the box on these two things, you'll find that so many conversations that you need to have with your spouse that you can't avoid having with your spouse can really lead to way more connection. But if you try and skip over these two things, it's only going to usually make things much worse.
Are you struggling to maintain the emotional and physical intimacy you once shared? Do you feel like you're spending more energy finding fault and tearing your partner down instead of magnifying their good and building them up? Don't worry, you're not alone. Many couples are struggling behind a forced smile and an inauthentic happiness. You feel drained, unheard, and more often than not, unappreciated. The good news is it's not too late to rekindle the flame and strengthen your bond. I'm offering a free relationship assessment call to help you take the first step towards revitalizing your relationship and reaching your own relationship nirvana. Whether you come alone or with your partner, I'm here to help you create the space for a more fulfilling and satisfying relationship. Don't wait any longer. Make the changes you need to thrive. Book your free call today at matthewphoffman.com/coaching. And let's get started on your journey to a kick-ass relationship. Got it.
I was laughing not because you're incorrect. I just love how correct you are, and dropping absolute gold nuggets. Because for me, I absolutely agree. Like, it's very easy to pick a fight from both parties. And I scroll through Instagram every now and then, if I'm bored for 3 or 4 minutes, and I like reels or like relationships, and they're kind of picking on each other. And there's plenty of like these when a woman's picking a fight with a man just because she wants to, and vice versa. Like, hey, let me pick a fight with my wife. Like, it happens, but I'll say this: most fights really explode because someone is playing a victim, and it's all the other person's fault. And so whatever is happening, it's the other person's fault, and no one takes ownership. So one of the things that my wife is amazing at, she mind judos me all the time, is she'll say, "Tell me what I'm not seeing."
Ooh.
And she's boop, right? So she's assuming full responsibility, and she'll put it all on her. And when we're in a disagreement on something, she will truly break down and just say those words. And I will try to think of like, all right, well, what is she not seeing? And then I'm like, well, you didn't see the fact that I didn't tell you the thing. So technically, right? And so we always try our best to start from whoever is fighting. It's my fault to begin with. I'm going to take full ownership. There's a book called Extreme Ownership. And meaning, like, if you're the leader, everything is your fault. And I actually like that approach. So if you claim to be the leader of the house, wife or husband, it's your fault. What am I not seeing? What did I do wrong? Let's fix this. Let's fix this problem. And so when you reverse that blame and you just take ownership, extreme ownership, it changes very quickly because it probably is your fault. And then that way you don't have to blame the other person. Yeah.
That's a great question.
Yeah, I love that because
Confuses it.
yeah, everybody,
Yeah.
when I talk to couples or individuals, they say, well, my husband, my wife, right.
Right.
The first thing people want to do is point that finger and say, it's them. And, I was chatting with somebody today, and they were talking about, that this is a man talking about his woman, she, walks the earth. She doesn't, she isn't, she won't. And I was like, wow, that sounds pretty nuclear, all about these bad things she's doing. And I can't help you with what she is or isn't doing, but let's talk about what you're doing or what
That's
you're
right.
not doing, right? We can only control what's in our own sphere. And I think that when we're angry and upset, we seem to, the blinders come on and we kind of miss that.
Yep.
And so that's great advice, Jeremy.
Oh.
So, Joseph, is a man's role in a relationship different from a woman's? And would you believe that they each have different roles or a similar role?
Jeremy, you got something?
I will say this. My man, and I know what you're thinking, and I feel like we probably have the same answer. Is I don't think those roles are defined by outside societal standpoint. I think that they're going to be defined by just having like a good conversation up front, pre-marriage, early marriage. What should we do? Who's good at what? And those things are going to change. Me and my wife literally had that conversation last night. It was a really good conversation of, oh, wow, I didn't know that. Like, yeah, let's make that pretty big shift in how we do business going forward. We figured out over the last year and a half, one particular way of doing business isn't working out that great. So let's just stop doing it that way and do it this way. Meaning that role literally shifted overnight because we had the conversation. It's going to be different for each couple. I do not believe that it's like wife should cook, clean, take care of the kids, and husband should go out and work. That can work. Awesome. If someone wants that, but let's have that conversation. A lot of my men that I work with from like a day trading stock market perspective, they're like, I want to make a bunch of money so my wife doesn't have to work. Have you asked her? Like maybe she wants to work. Maybe she likes going out and doing things and leaving the house and like provide, creating and building and scale. Maybe she wants that. Meaning have those conversations. Every single couple will be different. And those roles do need to be clearly defined because there's absolutely roles for sure. It's yin and yang, black and white. It is not 50-50. It's 0-100 sometimes. Sometimes it can be 50-50. Sometimes it can be 80-20. But we need to figure out who's doing what, at what point, at what season, and at what time frame.
Sure. Back to communication, intentional communication.
Yeah.
And also really, asking those questions, not just once and you're done, but always checking back in months later. How are we doing? What are we doing? Have the roles changed? How do we redefine the roles? Because you're right, life changes, right? Life happens, and sometimes we're throwing curveballs. And so again, we're back to intentionally speaking to each other about what those roles look like.
And I wanted to add on what Jeremy said, which I agree 100%, that of course there has to be roles, but I think even more than that, if you don't have the conversation, what I see a lot in my work is it leads to lots of resentment because you just assume certain things. And, let's take Jeremy's case of this, the stockbroker, and I want to just, work so my wife doesn't like, well, maybe she wants to. And if she doesn't get a chance to express herself, she may get really resentful and really frustrated. Now here you are bringing home tons of money and she's really unhappy. Well, you know why she's unhappy? Because she's stuck having to do a certain something, which is not what she wants to be doing. So I find that a lot of times that we kind of like, this is the roles that we're in, whether we just fall into them or society says these are the rules. And then like, we just go with that forever. And I end up seeing that it leads to a lot of resentment. And when there's resentment in marriage, forget about it.
No, I think, resentment doesn't work for anybody. It's like it's the poison you get. It's the poison you drink again and again and again when you're not letting it go, right?
It's toxic.
Yeah, it is. And I think, the reason we kind of asked that question, and I think there is not a one size fits all roles and responsibilities. I think Jeremy hinted to this, and Yosef, you hit it as well. It's really customized. It's like, what works for you? You can't take somebody else's role and responsibilities and go, well, that's what men do, so that's what I'm doing.
Right.
Because if it doesn't work for you, meaning you haven't had the conversation, haven't had the discussion, then it's like, what does it look like? What works best? And things do change over time. We have 3 kids, 2 are out of the house. We just have one who's got his own unique set of needs. How we handle that changes day to day, week to week, month to month. Brene Brown says, she comes home, she's like, all right, honey, I had a pisser of a day. I got nothing. You're going to have to pick up the slack on X, Y, and Z, even though I normally do that, right? And it's the communication around needs and changing in the moment. And I love, Jeremy, that you said, we just redefined something last night. It happens all the time. And having that flexibility. So there's not one size fits all. This is right, that's wrong.
Right.
What works for you? And how do you tailor it and communicate it? Because you can't read minds. And whenever I try, I fail. And I missed the mark. And so I love that. So we have 14 pillars. We've talked about them a little bit, of the qualities that we think are most important in a relationship, and different people have different foci on, hey, this is number one for me. But Jerremy, I'm curious, as you look across that list, which one do you either find that you have used the most, or do you think that men maybe need to do a better job at so they can have that relationship that they desire to have? What's something that you think is the right focus or that's worked for you? Which pillar speaks to you most?
Totally. And we've mentioned the 3 C's a lot, right? Commitment, communication, conflict resolution. So we've really discussed those three. And the one I would say that I have used a decent amount, and I feel like my wife would agree that we are pretty comfortable with, is the 14th, which is fun and humor. I mean, like money, work, business, all the stuff, all the things. Like, wait a minute, life is supposed to be pretty fun. We're supposed to have a pretty decently awesome time. Worst case scenario, we should laugh and enjoy ourselves as often as possible. And a lot of people are too flippin' serious, dude. They really are. So it's like I love doing fun, silly, ridiculous things ever so often. Going to a comedy club every now and then. I have one of the tenets that I live by is Ernest Hemingway. His quote is everything in moderation, including moderation. Every now and then we go a little wild, right? And I think you should. Every now and then you can do whatever you want, as extreme as you want to go with it, and have some fun. Life's supposed to be fun. Don't always work in the kids. It's like do things that are unique and cool and interesting and little unique, if you will, and just have fun with it.
Sure. It gives oxygen to a relationship.
Yeah.
Fun, laughing together. It really does.
Okay, so Jeremy got to be first here. Okay.
You're gonna do the same one? Nice, dude.
I will tell you that, well, again, what I have seen personally and what I've seen with couples is that marriages are amazing at getting really old and really serious very fast.
Mhm.
And like there was at the beginning, there was fun, there was joking around, there was going out of our way to do great things together. And what I find is that people just lose track of that really fast. And or they do it like with like their kids, it's like a family thing, but forget the kids. Like, what about the marriage? And what I find, let's say we speak about like a basic, part of like every marriage should have a date night or something along those lines. People usually do something, serious. Let's go for dinner and I find that couples lose that spark of let's laugh together. Let's do something fun together. Let's do something which is, maybe even a bit childish. But when you can get a couple, and the longer they're married, the more magic it creates. If you can get a couple to really laugh together, have fun together, do something creative together, it is just awesome to see how it lifts them up in such a powerful manner. And people are really mediocre at this. And I think it's a major problem. And there are so many things available. We live in a world today where it's like anywhere you live, there's so many things you can do that if you were dating or you were back in high school, you would find all those things. Find them now.
Right.
And when people can infuse that, as we all know, life can have many things that can throw our way, which can be serious and overwhelming and really stressful.
Yeah.
But now you get a couple to kind of check out of that and laugh and have fun together and get their mind off of things and really feel close. It's like gold.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's like magic.
Love that.
So either one of you can take this question first. And my question that I want to know from you is, what's been your biggest aha moment in your relationship, your biggest learning moment in your relationship?
Biggest learning moment. I think the initial answer that came to mind was pretty early in our relationship. And it was a time where we were doing this like kind of panel together, essentially. And I was asked the question, what's your meaning of life? What's the meaning of life? Life is, then insert, answer. And my answer was the pursuit of happiness. That's my meaning of life. And my wife looked at me and said, "Are you tired of pursuing?" I was like, damn. Yeah, I am. So I find ways to just be happy now. And when I say find ways, I mean, I do my absolute best just to ask myself, what do I want to do? When do I want to do it? And I just go do that, either selfishly or unselfishly. Selfishly, meaning I'm just pouring into myself and I'm just having a good old time by myself. And unselfishly, I really want to go hang out with my kid at the park and I want to take my son out of school. I took my son out of school for 3 days. The counselors called. They're all upset. They're like, oh, I know. I told them in advance, but whatever. They were calling to check in. But I wanted my son to be with me for 3 days because I went to a stock trading conference and I want him to come with me. So I brought him with me during the Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday stock trading conference. So all those things being said, I think for a lot of people, they do forget that marriage, relationships, they're supposed to be happy. They're supposed to add value to your life, not subtract. If you're miserable and upset, you kind of hate everything, you're doing something wrong. So figure out a way to readjust.
Well, I would say that I think one of the biggest realizations that I came to was that my own personal well-being, if that's not strong, the first person it's going to really severely impact is my spouse. And if I'm not happy in my professional life, if I'm not a healthy guy as far as, my physical health is concerned, like if I am living a life where I am depleted in many different fronts, no matter how great my intentions are, no matter how much I love my wife, I'm going to get the mediocre, spouse of the year award, no problem. And what I found was that the world of, I'll put it very global, but really self-care to make sure I'm thriving at work. I am feeling good about myself. I am doing things that I enjoy, that if I don't invest in myself in that way to make sure that I am up and running in a strong manner, I'm not going to be able to be anything to my spouse. And even more than that, all the things that I don't want to be, I'm actually going to start getting pretty good at quite fast. Yeah. And I think when I came to that realization, that really gave me a kick in the kind of, to really look at my own life outside of my marriage to figure out how I can just come to the table, in a much better way.
Yeah, Joseph, I love that you said that, because we are actually going to do a special episode, much like this episode, on self-care. Because if you are not present in mind, body, and spirit, you're not taking care of yourself, your own needs, you can't show up for your partner. You can't be your best for your partner.
Yeah, can't pour from that empty cup.
That's
and
right.
A lot of people either do it to excess and they're selfish, or they don't do it enough because they say, well, gosh, if I do this for me, it means I'm doing something for myself, and I can't do that. And finding that balance is huge. So you guys have been fantastic with your time and your desire to share the nuggets and pearls from your own experience. Before we find out where people can reach you if they want to connect, I'd like to end with each of you think about, and here comes the question, what's the biggest lever that a man can push, pull, and use right now to get the biggest impact in their relationship? Someone said, dude, I need to know what's the one thing I got to do, or what's the one thing I can start, right? There's no silver bullet for just one thing, but what thing in the relationship is going to give a man the greatest leverage to have the most impact now with their spouse, with their wife, with their partner? And either of you can go first on that, but I do want to hear from both of you.
All right. I got an answer for me. This helps me. And I know for a fact it'll help 85% of the male population. No alcohol for a period of time, and be in silence more frequently. No alcohol. Cut out your life for a period of time. Doesn't have to be forever, men, but come on, give me 3 months of no booze, please. And then silence. People pray, Matthew, they're praying for like what? 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 80 seconds, 20 seconds, 5 seconds a day, maybe before they go to sleep. Set an alarm, 20 minutes, go to silence, go somewhere in your house, go outside in nature, no phone, do something where it's nothing, no noise, no wife, no kids. It's just you. Because one of my quotes is, in silence, we hear the most. And that's the time where everything can collect. You can calm down and you can start feeling these emotions, because a lot of men are using alcohol as a suppressant to suppress those emotions and or actually feel those emotions, but they're doing it the wrong way. So do those two things, your life will change forever.
Whoa, nice. I would add like this, and this is what I've seen, I guess, myself, and I've seen this a lot with a lot of research. You got to figure out a way of how to start infusing your marriage with gratitude. Become an expert at showing your spouse how much you appreciate them. And I don't mean just feeling that, that's an important part of it, but expressing that. And that doesn't mean lavish vacations, nonstop gifts. There are so many things that we can do on a small daily basis, and even forget a daily basis. 3 times a week, figure out a way of how you can go out of your way to proactively express gratitude to your wife. It may be a small gift. It may be a beautiful text message. It may be, a close hug with some beautiful words when you come home. I don't know, but in the world of action, and begin to infuse gratitude. And I would say even more than that, not in a general way, like, oh, you're an amazing wife. Okay, be specific, tack it on to something. And I find that if we can start becoming people that are looking for those opportunities, and more importantly, when you see those opportunities, finding ways of how to express that, it begins to create an upward spiral that can lead to many more good things.
Great advice, and something we ascribe to. Wow. Fantastic stuff from both of you today. Joseph, if people want to connect with you, find you, talk to you, where should they go?
Like me, where am I going?
Probably probably 2 ways as far as, this real topic of marriage. Number 1 is my book, which you can find on Amazon, called Not a Partnership. And that book is really touched on a lot of things that we spoke about here today, which is probably things that all of us really agree on. And number 2 is I run basically a proactive marriage mastermind group, which is really helping couples take all the things that we know we should be doing and actually doing them. I always tell the people in the group, I said, you're not going to hear anything new that you haven't heard before. The question is, why aren't you doing these things? And therefore, let's make these things a part of your life. So that you can find on my website, more information about that. But those are probably the 2 areas of where you can find me and contact me.
Beautiful. And Jerremy, how do people get some of that infectious energy that you have?
Thanks, man. Best way to track me down is just find me on any social media platform. Again, first name is spelled with 2 R's. My dad's name was Jerry, so it stands for Jerry and me. So Jerremy with 2 R's, and just shoot me a message on any Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, whatever you use, Facebook. I have a really great team that'll make sure that I get the message, and they block all the random messages, and then they send me the good ones, and I always respond, usually within 24 hours. So just shoot me a message, and I'll be happy to connect with whoever messages me back. And then regarding content, me and my business partner, who's a woman, her name is Brittany Turner. She's having a new baby, and she just got married recently. We have a podcast together called Broke to Woke. It's entirely free. It's a really great podcast. It's on all the podcast platforms. And I know people like your listeners, they love podcasts. And you two create an amazing podcast. And that's a great way to listen and to learn and to grow as adults and everything. So it's all good.
Thank you. Well, you guys have had incredible energy today. I love it. You have shown up. You've given us some great pearls of wisdom. And thank you for being there for our listeners today.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Had a lot of fun with you guys. Can't wait to share it. And we just want you to remember one thing as we all sign off today.
Happily ever after doesn't just happen. It's on purpose.
There you go.
That's all we've got for this episode of the Kickass Couples Podcast. If you like the content of this show, you'll love Matthew's newly released book, Kickass Husband, Winning at Life, Marriage, and Sex. To receive a digital mini book of quotes and images from the book, all you have to do is rate this show and leave a review in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you tune in to listen. Then email us a screenshot of your review at podcast@kickasscouplespodcast.com and we'll get it over to you right away. Until next time, remember, happily ever after doesn't just happen, it's on purpose.